Good afternoon and welcome to the next concurrent session of the day, Ensure Integrity in Online Courses. Our presenter today is Aruna Shalom Narayanan from University of North Texas. If you have any questions for the presenter during the session, please feel free to enter those into the Q&A section at the bottom of your Zoom room screen, and we will address them at the end of the talk. On that note, I will hand it over to our presenter.
Thank you, Victoria. Hopefully everybody can hear me clearly.
We can.
Okay, thanks, Victoria. So my name is Arunachalam Narayanan. I go by Chalam. As Victoria said, I'm a faculty member in University of North Texas. Before that, I have taught in a couple of other state institutions, Texas A&M University and University of Houston. So I've been teaching some online courses probably for more than a decade now. So I've been through several of your online platforms that we are usually used to, like your Blackboard, Canvas, and simple even YouTube-based type of materials. And with the COVID happening, we have moved a lot of our course offerings through online. But at the same time, there are some integrity issues with respect to how the assignments are given and things like that. So I would like to share some of my thoughts, what we have done and what have been successful and what is around. These are just my experience along with my colleagues. If anybody have anything else to share, feel free to share during the presentation or during our question and answer sessions. With that, let me get into some basic introductions. So the first few minutes, maybe 15 minutes, I'll just talk about the general integrity issues and what we have done, and then I'll go into some specific examples that we have done throughout the semester. So first, what is academic integrity? I mean, as you all know, I mean, it can boil down to saying cheating in assignments or cheating in your coursework. It is usually termed as academic dishonesty in most campuses, but we do have almost every campus I have been have had a huge administrative body behind it, ensuring the quality and ensuring some sort of discipline in it. But at the same time, you have to understand that in many cases it falls on deaf ears. One of the reasons is um, the university also wants to protect the students. I mean, you can't just go ahead and say, oh man, this is mass cheating. You have to prove. The burden of proof is still on the faculty member, and sometimes it's arduous to do it. So we have to make sure, we have to figure out how to get away with those low-hanging fruits. I like to quote a few things. One of the physics professors in MIT, David Pritchard, once said, a lot of people cheat a little, and there is also a few people who cheat a lot. I am more focused on the last part, the latter part, where few people who cheat a lot. Once you can handle those, the lot of people cheating a little is probably not a huge issue. It can skim through. I mean, because sometimes it might not be a real cheating. It's just like talking to a student in a classroom and figuring out what the question meant or something like that. But the last part, when a few students who cheat a lot, and I'll give you some examples later on, those are the ones that you want to make sure that you get hold of. And uh, and and one of the myth around integrity is people think like in online students are cheat more. But I would like to clarify that online students are no more likely to cheat than an on-campus peers. I mean, if they are intending to cheat, it will happen because we don't allow them to do assignments in a classroom. We still allow them to take their assignments home, and they are pretty much doing the same thing if they are going to take the online class or not. So it's not because it's online the amount of integrity issues have gone up. Is just the COVID happened at the same time. There was a lot of online resources that have popped up. So even if we go back to campuses, those resources are still there for the students to cheat. So it's not just an issue with the online courses alone. And the other thing is with respect to demographics. If you have older population in your classes, they tend to cheat a little less because they are there to gain education. I mean, I have seen that in my classes. Folks who are married, who are working, they really want to learn the subject, and they tend to cheat a little less than the other common younger students. So that's pretty much I've seen that happening. So we have to make cheating difficult, and that's one of the things that you need to understand. It's the onus on the faculty member to make it difficult. At the same time, we also need to educate them early on. Don't leave it till the end of the semester and try to implement policies. You have to start it right from the get-go. So to just give you a brief background about the COVID impact on these online courses and the academic integrity issues in our campus, I would say this is pretty much true with other campuses that I've spoken to about 2/3 or to 3/4 increase in violations, or academic violations. And surprisingly, it's not just the new students. We have a lot of senior classes also going through this. And many faculty members, when they went to an online curriculum, they were not prepared for handling this. They just basically gave the assignments, and you're not proctoring them in person, so you really don't know what's going on, and the solutions get passed on from one person to another. And then you're trying to do the cat and mouse game or whack-a-mole, where you hit one and then another thing pops up. So you have to be proactive. And another thing that you have to understand is, people say, oh man, this has to do with one particular group of students coming from one country or one particular region. It's not that. It's not a behavior violation. It's more an academic issue. And if something happens in one class and it carries on for a couple of semesters, people think that's a norm. So you have to really hit them hard early on, and you have to stress that there is no excuse for integrity violations, and you have to be very firm. Don't give a slap on the wrist. Try to give a punishment that actually deters them from doing it. So for example, let's say you find some cheating in a quiz that's worth less, like 1% of your grade. Giving a 0 in that assignment really does not send a starking tone to the entire class, but rather have it in your syllabus is that if you violate, it is going to be an F grade, regardless of whatever assignment it is. And then you can show some leniency. You can drop a grade from an A to a B, B to a C, but be firm at the initial stage and say it is going to be an F grade if you violate, regardless of the assignment. So having that really echoes a lot. And nowadays, what we have said, I mean, in the entire campuses, the very first week of the semester, there was a lot of messages sent to the students, a PowerPoint presentation, a video from the dean, the academic office, and everybody regarding these violations, to educate them early on. One of the reasons is they need to understand that if an academic violation occurs, it's not a simple thing. It goes to the dean level, and everybody is wasting their resources, and nobody wants to do that, because we are here to educate the student, and we are not there to play the detective role. um, Let me switch on my video. I was not intending to be blank. Okay. So with regards to violations and what can be done, so what are some of the violations? So one of some of the things, let me define what a violation and what we have seen. Other students doing the assignment, especially in an online environment, all they need is an access to a computer and their login, and somebody else can do it. And I have caught folks who have outsourced the assignment to a different country and in a different time zone, and they're working on the assignment and submitting it. And obviously, one of the most common thing that everybody knows, the elephant in the room, is the check.com, where there are test banks and solutions available where they can pay to get the answers. So for those of you who may not know check, I'll just tell you briefly about that. If you think about check, um, since this is where around the COVID happened in 2020, you can look at their revenue. They went from a $400 million revenue company, and now there was almost 100% increase in 2021. They reported a revenue of 776 million, and they say they're pretty much on track to make $1 billion in revenue. And they are saying that they are doing a lot of things to prevent cheating. I don't know how much they are trying to do and how successful they are. And I mean, you can see the president saying a few things uh, about what they're doing. They're working with the faculty where they're asking them to submit their questions, and they will make sure that these questions are not answered in the check platform and things like that. I have never done it. I specifically tell the students that if they take any resources from check.com, and if I find out it's an academic violation, and I will grade them accordingly. Unfortunately, there's only a few things we can do when this is a public website and they can pay for the service. What I have done on the other way is sometimes I do surprise checks. When they submit the solution, I call them and ask them to explain the answers. A few students, maybe pick a handful randomly, 4 or 5 students, and ask them to explain the answers. And if they're not able to explain, and they might say that they got the answers from some other place, and that's when the academic violation comes into play. There are quite a few schools that have caught, you can Google and read some of the cases of how they found out, and they are actually barring the students from getting into check.com if they have an account over there. Another faculty member creates a pseudo account and monitors what all activities goes on in check in that particular book or the exercise and things like that. Is check.com, there are other stories about check being sued and stuff like that. For example, there is a major case between check and a major publisher who is actually fighting this case in the court regarding the test banks. I don't know how successful they are going to be. Uh, there are good chance that hopefully they are successful so that the policies of check changes drastically. But the stock price should tell you a few things. I mean, they were at the peak around to end of 2021, and then they dropped because of the classes going online. I mean, classes coming in campus, and then the faculty members taking are cognizant of what is going on with check, and those activities have started to taper their revenue profile for check. And the case is also taking a good turn. The case was filed, I believe, in 2021, and hopefully we will have a judgment early 2022 or late 2022. And if that happens, there could be, if it is against check.com, maybe we can address some of these issues. But if you just close down check, there's also another couple of other websites that will pop up. So the problem is not going to go away. So we have to be more vigilant, and we have to figure out how to do certain things. And then obviously the other things that happens, which is offhand, is the group me and the WhatsApp. um, I don't know how many of you know, I know we like to keep the class listing available in certain online programs like your Canvas and Blackboards for the students to interact with each other. But allowing them to interact with each other when you're monitoring is a great thing. But in a platform like GroupMe or WhatsApp, you're not in that platform, in that social platform, and they may be sharing a lot of things over there. We can write in the syllabus saying that sharing that is an academic violation, but if you're not there, there's no way that we can go ahead and capture that. And one thing I have found out is if you make your people listing available in these online classes, they can easily create the GroupMe and WhatsApp for the entire class without even your permission. They can just download the names and they can search for it and create a GroupMe list. So what I have found out in some of the big classes is just hiding the name list can prevent a big mass group me or a WhatsApp type of grouping being created. They can only create among their own friends. I'm not saying this will completely control your academic violation, but it can at least get it under control. Like what I'm saying is there'll be just a few people doing getting into group and doing some massive cheating, but not the entire class. So so hide your people list if you don't intend that to be available, because you can, hiding the people list does not bar them from using the discussion boards in the online platforms like Canvas and Blackboard. Uh, to prevent academic integrity, I'm going to show you a few tools, but the main thing is you have to be proactive. Create assignments that are cheat proof. It's easily said than done. I try to teach a lot of analytical courses. So whenever I create any type of a course assessment, I try to randomize as much as possible. But again, I'm lucky enough to have at least 30 to 40% of my questions being analytical, where I can juggle the questions. And I'm not saying that you need to randomize everything. because as you know that if they score 60 out of 100, they're going to get only a D grade. And so that's not a great thing. So what you want to do is you have to make it difficult, like make the, no, I shouldn't say difficult, randomize things at least 30 to 40% of the exam, so that uh, the grade cannot go to an A or B if they are trying to cheat. So to have multiple versions. And one thumb rule that I always tell my young faculty colleagues is every semester keep changing your questions. I'm not saying change the entire question paper, 20% or 30% of it, because in a couple of semesters you'll have a whole new question paper. 40 or 50% will be new, and that's pretty much a new question paper over there. So keep changing it, because people do tend to share, and there is no way to 100% guarantee that you're going to catch them. And the other thing is, don't catch and release. Let's say you find somebody cheating, just don't bring them in and give them a friendly warning and then release them. That is not going to send the message out. You have to give them some sort of an academic punishment. If the violation is egregious, you can go as far as giving an F and letting the student know that you have taken care of this right then and there. But one thing that, especially in our campuses and other campuses, that we try to say is, whenever there is an academic violation, the faculty member must report it to the dean of students or any other grouping that you have. The reason for doing that is these students may have multiple violations, and when they have multiple violations, that's when things get very serious. So having them report, even if you don't give them an F grade in the course, just reporting them sends a big message to the student. So make sure that you document this, and there is a venue for you to report those cases. So let me show some things that I've done. I will use first the things that I've done in Hawks. I mean, obviously this is a Hawks. I use some of the Hawks tools over here for one of my courses. So I want to show, the first thing is how I've used Hawks as such. The In Hawks, we teach a statistics-based course, and I use the Hawks learning platform to give a portion of the assignments. I'm not saying 100% of the assignments. I believe about 60 to 70% of the assignments is administered through Hawks Learning. So they give a pretty nice website of showing them how the students access and things like that. And many of these assignments have 10 to 15 questions, sometimes even 30 questions. A first simple technique that we use is we look at the time per student, like how long do they take to do the assignment? Because no matter how good you are, to read a question takes 20 to 30 seconds. And if you're able to finish a quiz like less than 5 minutes, when there are 30 questions, 25 questions, that's a clear indication that something is going on. So the first thing that we look at is a time per student. And then what we do is, like, the time per student, for example, look at this. These are some certifications, and you can see clearly that the student had spent time in answering and getting these assignments done. And if you ask me, this assignment took only 1 minute, 21 seconds, because that's a very small assignment. We kind of know those things. But on the other hand, if you look at this person, he never practiced, he never learned. And almost all his assignments were done in 2 to 3 minutes or 4 minutes over here. This raises a flag that there's something wrong with this particular student. So what I do is I request from Hawks Learning or any of the online thing is ask them for the IP address of where this was taken. Because this doesn't clearly identify whether the student copied or not. He could have gotten the answers from someone. In this particular case, when we picked up the IP address, what happened is we did an IP address tracking, and we found out that this person outsourced the assignment. It was an online course. He is in the United States, in and around the Texas region, but all his assignments were completed halfway around the globe. And there was no way that the student could escape as soon as we found out this. And when we pulled him in, and he basically said, yeah, I outsourced the assignment. I'm sorry. And we filed the violation report, gave him an F, but the dean of students came back and said that's not enough. And he had a lot of issues after that, academic issues. There was a question that has come up in the chat box. I will try to answer some of those questions later on at the end of the session. Um, I think some Gloria is sharing some of the things that they do over there. Okay. The other thing, I mean, some people say, okay, why don't we have responders locked down and responders monitor and things like that? But you don't really want to have so much of video content that you want to review throughout the semester, because we do a lot of assignments. You want to do from strategic assignments. When I say strategic, is like your midterm, some of your main quizzes or main assignments. That's when you want to do the video thing. Don't do the video and responders lockdown for everything. Okay. The other thing that I try to do during the semester is have a lot of active learning exercises. When I say active learning exercises, is these are exercises that are not cookie cutter, and these are things that require students creativity, and that takes a whole new tone during the course of the semester, and they can't copy, they can't find the solutions online. um, for example, in one of the stat courses, what I do is, regardless of the class size, every student have to have an individual project. So they have to bring their own data, they have to create their own questions, and they have to answer it. When we are doing that, we really identify the students. Like, for example, let's say a student scored almost 98% to 99% in our assignments and the quizzes, and then look at the project report that looked like this person didn't even understand A or B or C of the statistics. That clearly shows that, okay, there's something disconnect between these two. Then you go back, you can look at the assignments, how what are they how they did it. Go back, look at those videos if you have them, and then call the student online, or in campus, and ask them to discuss certain things. But whatever you're trying to do, do it early. Don't do it at the later part, because it's not going to help in controlling the violations that is happening in the class. And I want to reiterate this 20 to 30% rule. Keep that under your control, because I don't mind a student. I mean, I'm just saying, I know it's been recorded, but I really don't care about a student who cheats his way and gets a C or a D, because that's not going to help him in his long run. He may end up graduating, but with a lower credit, and probably he may even have to repeat a few courses. But you really need to make sure that nobody cheats and gets an A or a B. So that's where this 20 to 30% of your grading that is not cookie cutter is going to help, because those are things that you can control, and you can control the copying that is happening outside your class norm over there. um, this student projects has really helped in my graduate classes. And even regardless of which major it is, the graduate classes are almost 90 to 95% of the students may find this one difficult, but they end up appreciating it, because it helps them think about the subjects, those experiential, instead of giving cookie cutter type of questions, because most of these subjects are pretty old. I mean, there's nothing that you can do a lot in new stuff in statistics. You can get new data. That's what the new thing is. But coming up with questions for that will be difficult. Instead of that, they can go get the data from their work, and they can come up with a hypothesis, or do some regression analysis, find some new things that can help with their work. That they also appreciate that. It also makes them think about the subject more deeply than just going and looking out for solutions in websites and other tutorial resources that you have. Another thing that you want to be clear is, you have to be very consistent. Consistent throughout the semester, throughout the department, and throughout the college. I know it's easily said than done. In my department, our department chair, a dean, they're all very supportive. Not just this campus, I've been in other campuses which have also been very strict about it. Um, yes, the dean of students will try to support the students, but when you show them evidence, they will back you up. So at the end of the day, you should not go blame the student just for blaming it. You have to do your due diligence and have enough proof before taking the case up to the administrative level. So I'm not saying like suspect everybody, but when you suspect someone, do your due diligence, file the report, do spend some time. But that spending some few minutes or maybe few hours that you're going to do will clear your headache for the rest of the semester, maybe for a few years. And I also have like, if somebody needs, I can share some of the ethical statements I actually have. We in our college, we try to give an ethical statement. We ask the student to sign at the very start of the semester in every course. Especially in the courses that I teach, I list about 6 or 7 types of violations that we have found out. And I say all of these are violations. And if anybody does this, you're going to get an F. We show them examples, because when the students hear from the other, they only hear the good stories of how they copied and got away. They never share the stories of how they got caught and how they got sanctioned. That really does not pass along until you kind of fail the entire class, or you fail like 20, 30 students. If you catch just 2 or 3 students, nobody really knows that. So, but you have to publicize that without then obviously without the name and things like that, but you need to make sure that, to tell them that we keep track of it. And one thing that the student knows that they won't acknowledge is that every activity that they're doing online is monitored. Every click is monitored. All you have to do is just go and use that. The analytics that we collect in terms of online work is so much. We just don't have the time to do it because that's not our job. Like I said, we are not detectives. At the end of the day, we are educators. We want to educate and we want to spend time educating them. But at the same time, they should understand that we have this information and we'll use it when it's necessary. Um, um, I think there are a couple of questions that have come up, but I'll try to answer that when. For one of the things that has come up is one person, Gloria, is asking what happens with GroupMe. So GroupMe is it's like a social group where the students create a social group of 5 or 10 students for the entire class. Where let's say somebody's taking an exam, they may share the question or the answers in that and say, "This is a question I saw, be prepared for it," or something like that. And we really don't have access to it because it's a social network, right? And you can't prevent that. I mean, there's no way you can tell, "Oh, don't use social network for this." But what you can just say is you cannot share information. Sometimes what happens is there'll be some students who are in the group me who are just there to have a ability to engage with other students, because you should encourage them to talk to each other about the class and how to, because the part of being in a college environment is working together. But it, it's not ideal for them to share solutions. There'll be students who may get offended, definitely, by seeing these type of activities, and they'll bring you those evidence, and that evidence is good enough to take it to the dean of students and giving them academic probations if necessary, the student who share that. So for that to happen, you need to specifically state in the syllabus that these are copyrighted material. You cannot share that information in GroupMe. If you don't have that, it's very difficult for that type of violation to stand the test of times when the student appeals. So you have to make sure that you list all of those violations pretty much upfront so that the student knows. And once you list them, whether they read the syllabus or not, whether they have signed your ethics statement or not, once you have listed it in the Canvas website or in the policies, that's done. Then you're protected and you can take that case later on. It's just like when we sign the big Apple agreement, we may not read the agreement, but once it's written, we can't really go against it because we have accepted the agreement. The same thing holds over here, but we have to have that listed up front. Hopefully I answered Gloria's question over there. And uh, taking action early on will really help. I mean, like I'm saying, deterrence, and you have to be very, very consistent. Don't do it in one class and leave it for the other. When you have several sections, make sure that you are being consistent across. Okay. So in terms of technology, what are the things that I've used in terms of deterring these things from happening? The first thing that comes to mind that everybody knows is Respondus lockdown browser. It's a very, very popular one. It's the easiest tool where you lock down the access for the other assignments, the other questions. And you can also have Respondus monitor. And I don't know how many of you know, I mean, sometimes you can allow certain websites to be accessed because not all questions can be answered by just looking at it. The students may need to access a formula sheet. They may be needing to access some material that you may allow them to access during the exam, like they can bring in a PowerPoint lecture or something like that. if you need it, you can allow Respondus lockdown from special select websites. Like if you click on the lockdown settings, you can allow access to some specific domain. So for example, if I'm going to allow a student to do a quiz, I'm just using the example of Hawks Learning again, I allow them to use any tools in Hawks Learning. And also another thing is, don't, whenever you're having an online assignment, keep it timed. When I say timed is, don't allow the window to be open for 2 weeks or a week or even a day. That is inviting trouble. Keep the window as short as possible. So let's say you have a quiz. When they open the quiz, they should be done with the quiz in 20 minutes or 30 minutes or whatever it is. Or if you want them to, let's say you are teaching a class where the student needs to have some leeway with when they start the assignment and when they finish the assignment, don't keep it for 24 hours. Open the assignment at 4 o'clock and close it at like 7 or 8 o'clock. And if someone says, I can't make that time window, let that student come to you and you assign them a different time window. But don't give a time window for the entire 24 hours, because that is inviting trouble. Okay, uh, controlling time really helps a lot. Okay, so coming back to this Respondus lockdown over here, you can allow access to restrict access to certain websites. If you allow them to do something, you can allow them to use calculator. But definitely there are some drawbacks. One of the biggest drawback in Respondus lockdown is the Excel sheet that comes along with it. Um, is not really good. I mean, I teach a pretty heavy analytical course, and the spreadsheet that comes along with Respondus lockdown is very, very bad. It can be used for doing very simple calculations, but when it needs a lot more detail, it cannot. And for obvious reasons, Respondus lockdown doesn't allow you to access some special software. Like let's say I want to allow them to use Excel. I cannot make that happen in Respondus lockdown. So what I try to do in situations like this is, I really want them to use the tools to do a part of the assignment. So I split the exam into two. One portion will be completely Respondus lockdown, where they can't use any part of the information other than what's there in the question paper. And then the second part of the assignment will be outside the lockdown browser, where they can use the Excel sheets and other tools. Why I'm doing this is going back to that 20-30% split. I'm saying this Respondus lockdown will really test their knowledge in terms of like those type of questions that you're designing, whereas the Excel based ones, you have it timed. Even though it's open, they can use a lot of things that they could, but at the same time it is timed. As soon as they open the exam, they have to submit it within an hour or hour and a half. So controlling time is one way to restrict them using other resources, or controlling access to websites is another way of doing it. But both have their pluses and minuses. So remember that. The other thing that people, oh man, I'm having Respondus monitor, and that can prevent cheating because they are in front of a camera. To a certain extent, yes, but you have to understand that there are some loopholes over there, because this is not a 360-degree camera. There are 360-degree cameras available, but they are expensive and you don't want to use it, or the students have to pay for it, and sometimes it may not be feasible monetarily. But the Respondus monitor here is just a front-facing camera. They do show the room at the start, but during the exam, you really don't have access to it. But they have done a pretty nice feature where it shows these highlighted, like if something shows up in red, that means there's something wrong over there. But remember that whenever you see something high over here, that doesn't mean there's really copying taking place. Maybe these students are just moving their head up and down, because some of them are really nervous when they are taking the exam, and you have to understand that. And so you have to review the videos to make sure that really there's no violations over there. And they do a pretty good job in highlighting those. Okay. um, the other things that you can do, I mean, I'm lucky enough to do a lot more analytical, objective oriented courses, but I know there is a lot of courses that require writing, and those type of courses, the best software is obviously Turnitin. But Turnitin also has its pluses and minuses, because it's how you fine tune your Turnitin with respect to what resources that they can use. I just wanted to give you a list of these commercial e-proctoring software that is available. I will hand over some of these slides to Victoria. I think she may have it. If not, I'll give it to her. if you need access to these list of software that you can look out for, you pretty much you may want to think about, because I know most of the campuses that I worked with use either Respondus, Lockdown, or Turnitin, but there are commercial stuff that is available. For example, Penn State uses, I think, WebAccess or ProctorU, things like that that have been used in other campuses. Many of them are not free or not as cheap as Respondus or Turnitin. They are expensive. So for example, ProctorU, it's about $16 for the first hour. So if you're going to take an exam, you have to pay $16. The student has to pay $16, or you have to make sure that there's somehow you're paying for that proctoring service. There are services like Secure Exam, Proctor Track, and all of this. Most of this, what happens is you have some human person actually monitoring their activity, either through a camera uh, or they are taking it in a testing facility over there virtually that they have to report over there. So all of these are expensive. They are available, but if you really need it, you can do it. But at the same time, like I said, you have to be very strategic in how you want this to happen, because many of our classes are pretty big in sizes, and so you have to figure out how to manage your resources and how and make sure that the students are also not being unnecessarily charged for these things, because they are not cheap over there. Okay. And then talking and coming back to some of my final thoughts. I know we have about maybe 10 minutes remaining. I know Victoria just switched on a video to indicate that I have just 10 minutes. So my final thoughts over here. Uh, um, I know academic integrity is a big issue, but I want to reiterate that most of the students are here to learn, so don't be deterred about it. All I would say is, if you find some, start early, catch them, and let the students know that you have caught, and then you're making sure that the exam and the course integrity is maintained. Um, and one of the other things, I know hopefully all those attendees are faculty members over here. You want to make sure that you protect your faculty members, because when you find academic violations and when you report them, you are bound to have certain type of repercussions happening from the student populations through evaluations and things like that. You should have some mechanism within your how to say, within your evaluation criteria to accommodate for that for those faculty members. So let's say in a particular semester that particular faculty member sanctioned about 20-30 students in the class. In his or her evaluations was bound to get tanked that semester. You should not penalize that faculty member for that semester. So you should have a mechanism somewhere to document that, to encourage the faculty members to do that and support them, because that will send a strong message to the faculty body that if you are taking the right steps, we are there to protect you. That's very, very important. And that's something that we are also encouraging within our group members. But at the same time, remember, it's not like you have to prove your case. You can't just blindly go and say, oh man, they all copied. You have to prove it. If you don't prove it, then you're also in trouble, because saying that a student violated in an exam is a pretty big thing. I mean, the students also will come and say, I didn't do it. Then you should have your proof to show that it happened. And one of the things that I mean, yeah, I'm taking some time to do this, and you're taking your time to come in and listen to me. This is a teamwork. This cannot happen individually. Like, I cannot do it in one class and expect my entire department to do the same thing. It's a teamwork. We do talk about this almost every semester. We help other faculty members to deal with when they bring up these issues. And also we try to maintain a list, just like the dean of students, where we share that some of the modus operandi of how things happens and how we catch them, so that we train other faculty members. It's a teamwork. It's not an individual work. So as an academic community, we all need to come to get together to do this. I mean, I've been pushing Hawks Learning, I mean, personally on this front, to give me a lot of access to IP address, and I've gone and they have done a pretty good job, at least with the last year or so. I get, like, for some of them, I mean, I'm not going to ask them to trace IP address for almost for every assignment. That's be insane. For strategic assignments, I get an IP address report of when the activity is complete, and I spend like about 10 minutes to just quickly go through those times and make sure that at least those egregious violations are captured. Okay. Again, my idea behind this talk is for me to share some of the best practices that we have done, or share some of the practices that we have used in the coursework. And I'm happy to listen to you or share some of my thoughts. One of the questions that Gloria actually put out in the Q&A session that we did. Gloria, make sure that the students provide a photo ID to verify identification and things like that. All of that is great. That is what a Respondus lockdown browser will also do. But like I said, the amount of proctoring or those type of activities you want to do depends on the assignments that you have, because a course will have several assignments. So you have to be strategic in how you utilize those resources. But that's a great thing. You want to ensure it. And I think we have about 5-6 minutes remaining. So I'm open to any questions that you have over there. I think you can't talk. You probably need to chat. So if you type in the chat box, we'll be happy to answer.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much. This has been so informative and helpful. I know everyone will have a lot of great takeaways from this time together. Right now, the chat is disabled. So if you have any comments or questions, please go ahead and enter those into the Q&A area. I'm going to go ahead and actually share a question my colleague Layla and I had for you. So we were wondering, what is the most common method of cheating that you have come across?
Uh, One of the most common method is obviously they are taking answers from a solution that is already solved and provided online, like a check.com or things like that. But
Mhm.
in Hawks Learning, when we use because like I said, I use I teach analytical courses through Hawks Learning. You have random numbers, so that's not possible in this case.
Mhm.
The most common thing that I've seen here is what they do is they give the access to another student for them to do it. Like what they do is they give the login information and someone somewhere is doing it. And for that, the only way is IP address or those photo things that we try to do. Unfortunately, that is happening a lot.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. Another question that my colleague Layla and I had, do you have any tips for instructing students on how to properly use Respondus?
Can you repeat that question, Victoria? What do you mean by proper?
Yes, so just maybe it's their first time using Respondus lockdown browser, and they're not familiar with it. Do you have any tips on how to make the students comfortable with using that platform?
The uh, it's first time they're going to encounter it. It's always going to be difficult. What I try to do is at the early on in the semester, I have a practice assignment, like a 2-3 question, and I allow them to take it and make sure that everybody attempts and gets it done. That's the only way to ensure that they know how the platform works. At the same time, the monitor one is the one that really, whenever you click on the responders locked on with monitor, some of them use their laptop, some of official laptop that prevents them to share the camera, and they don't realize it until they get into that type of a mode. So my advice, especially to the faculty members when they're doing these practice assignments, make sure that you have it something like with the responders monitor, so that they are able to go through that whole process, because it takes 5 minutes to get to that level of where they're about to take the exam. They go through that process well beforehand, before anything you want to do in a class during a semester. So I would say to ease it, to do a practice session or like a practice quiz.
That sounds like a great idea. Definitely helpful for the students to get those nervous jitters out
Yeah.
with a new system, a new experience. Thank you for sharing that. It does look like we have a comment or question. Dean Poet says, this is
I think he's looking for email from you guys that he has attended.
yes. We will, I believe we will be sharing certificates of proof of attendance. So to all of our attendees. So thank you for asking about that, Dean. Let's see, Gloria says she does Hawks practice test run 2. Students practice submitting their work as a PDF into Canvas as well. And they teach the acceptable teaching testing position. She said that a Hawks rep visits the Zoom classroom on the day of the practice test run.
Yeah. And another thing that I want to share is sometimes, like I said, you want them to use other tools. Whenever you go through this Respondus lockdown, you pretty much close your access to the other parts of the internet or your computer. So sometimes you want them to do, because you want them access to some statistic software or any type of software that they are trying to work with. So what, at the same time, you want to ensure that this is the only student sitting in and working on the exam and not somebody else. So what we do is, if you say that you're monitoring, at least you can scare the heck out of 80% of the students. That's what you really want, right? So what you want to do is you have an assignment with a Zoom video on. That's it. You tell them that you have to do your assignment, but you need to have your Zoom video on the entire session. And that's enough. That's enough deterrent to prevent some major issues in the exam. Obviously, I'm not saying we're going to control 100%, but like I said, we want to control 80 to 85%, and then the other 15%, they most of the time you'll be able to find out during the course of the semester.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, everyone, it does look like we are right out of time. And I just wanted to say thank you to all of our attendees who shared excellent questions and comments and experiences in the Q&A area. And of course, thank you to our speaker for all the valuable information that you shared with us today. Everyone, our next concurrent session will begin at 4 o'clock Eastern. I'm going to go ahead and enter into the chat box links to our upcoming session rooms, as well as a link to our conference website. If you go to our conference website, you'll see our complete list of sessions and their descriptions. And while accessing our conference website, don't forget to swing by the exhibit hall to say hello to the Hawks team if you have not yet. We'd love to connect with you there. And there you can view a quick 5-minute demonstration to be entered to win our hourly giveaway. We have some great prizes lined up. Your choice of a 6-month subscription to Audible, 1-year subscription to Disney Plus, or a $100 Amazon gift card. With that, I'm going to go ahead and give us all a break between our next session. Make sure you get into your next session room. And thank you so much for being here today, everybody.